If you come forward, please. Mr. Levin, if you will do the honors, please.
And it's my pleasure as the Chief Executive Officer, what the hell that means, I don't know. But more important, you have spent 25 years with this company. I have spent many more. And if there ever was a company I wanted to work for, it's 11 It's my pleasure to give you this gift of appreciation for the work that you do and that I feel is one of the most troublesome areas of getting ourselves recognized in packaging in this field. So congratulations to you.
Better be a good speech after I told everybody we're great communicators.
Well, I may be a good communicator. We'll try on the speech part. Mr. Lebanon, Mr. Amsterdam, Mr. Sokolow, Mr. Henler, Hockey, Jack, Jim, all my friends and co-workers. I thank you for the years that I've worked here and the many challenges that all presented. Many here have heard or said this before, but I truly can't believe it's 25 years. I started, this was only going to be a temporary job. Sometimes, in the past, I felt like I was here almost as long as you, Mr. Levinson. The reason for that is my wife's family. When I first met my wife, I had no idea what Lebanon was. I heard stories. My Aunt Pauline Lewicki, you remember her, used to tell stories. Now, she told stories of very young Harold Leviton. And
You better say still young.
who ran around the Brooklyn facility. She tells stories like she used to push you in a cart. Now, I'm not sure if that was carriage or a cart. Aunt Pauline retired when I first started with 48 years in Leviton. At her retirement, she summed up her years. And her speech was, I never got rich, but the work was steady, and I had lots of fun. Okay? Aunt Helen said Leviton was a place that you could work for a lifetime. In those days, I said, no, a lifetime? No way. How could you spend your whole life in one place? I guess I'm finding out how. That was just a real long commitment in those days. My wife Marilyn, who was then my girlfriend, graduated from high school. She needed a job. And Helen said, come to Lebanon. I have a job that's available without Kupiniak. So she came, she got the job, and she talked about Leviton. She had her own stories. Her stories were a little bit different because she was 17 at the time, and her stories were about the different work. Her stories were about the people, and all the fun she had. And I couldn't understand this. No, Lebanon wasn't for me. Well, over the next several years, my wife became my girlfriend. I'm sorry, my girlfriend became
my mistress, and
I finished college and I returned from military service. We had a date set for our wedding. I needed a job. So when Helen said, give me a resume, I'll give it to Carmine. There's a few job openings. Well, I interviewed with Howard Bangs and John Gallup. John Gallo gave me, offered me a position as a junior industrial engineer. I accepted. After all, I needed a job. I was getting married in 6 months. I could wait to get rich. I also told myself it was temporary. I'll find something better. Well, the first day was very interesting. I met so many people, but the thing that stands out the most was supplies. They issued me a pencil, they issued me a pad, and 2 screwdrivers. And they told me if I wanted another pencil, I had to bring back the stub, which I did. I worked in the place. Well, I worked the job for a while, and as fate would have it, I decided that I was going to look for another, job, experience. For a whole year. Well, I answered an ad. The person that interviewed me knew John Dazzo. So he calls John. John says, Eddie Albano. Okay. Charlie. This is Charlie Chase he goes to. Eddie Albano is looking for a job. You have a position available. P.S. I know I was looking for some experience, so I gained a little bit more. The work was steady. Had lots of fun. Some more experience. Well, I started on the drafting board. You guys remember that stuff, don't you? It's one of those big tables, sort of on a slant, had a mechanical device on top of it, not a monitor and a mouse. Yeah, well, I worked on it for a few years, and I, soon got bored with the board and needed more challenge. And so I decided to move on. But there was a position in Leamington. It was available. So we talked about it, and there was this new engineer. Not new to Lebanon, but new to the company. And I said, gee, maybe he wants me. So we talked a little bit, and I joined this new department with the new engineer with lots of new challenges. Well, what?
Turn page.
But this new engineer was Bill Bowie. We had lots of different challenges. Okay? We learned data analyzer. Today we call it supernatural. We restructured the bills. We created ECN procedures and lots of other things. We had, lots of fun. 7 years later, though, gee, we need a little bit more. So I go to Bill and I say, actually it was a meeting with Bill and Mr. Person. I say, I need more. And they say, more? In 7 years, we've changed so much. The engineers and the rest of the company, they want our heads on a platter. So we continued to do some new things. And they called me in again and I said, we have this other position for you. It's in operations. That was the downside. They told me it was a downside. No. So I accepted this job. For the next 12 years, I was challenged. I mean, you got to understand what I was charged with. One of my functions was to remove or get rid of the excess inventory. But Jack suggested that I treat this inventory as if it were my own. Well, I don't throw away anything. He also told me that the only one that approved these scrap approvals, or, scrap authorization, is Mr. Cram and Mr. Lebanon. And he told me this stuff belongs to Mr. Lebanon. He doesn't want you to scrap it. So I was challenged. So I learned. You could stamp, you could strip, you could plate to make it something else. And we did that. Tried to eliminate the scrap. It was a lot of work. So I decided we've got to do something else. So we started a new challenge, as they say, creating a new procedure, and we did that. And it was really exciting. Well, some years later, I started getting bored with it again. I said, Zeke, it's only temporary, but I hate to leave. I've got a house. I've got 3 boys. The work is steady. It's challenging. And I still have 2 screwdrivers. Well, I was offered a position in packaging, and, I was a little, like, disturbed about this. I couldn't understand how the challenge was there. You know, you work with parts, basically all my living life. And you stamp, and you plate, and you strip, and you assemble, and then you stick it in a box. Well, until now, I never knew what sticking it in the box really meant. It is a lot of work, and now I know why Jack Cacavelli has been challenged for the last 42 years. In closing, I'd like to say that I've added my stories to the Lewicki family stories. I've never found, and I don't think I could, find a better place to work, a more challenging place to work. It's probably the best, you know, for me, it's probably the best place I could ever be. Besides, work is steady. I'm definitely having fun, you know. I have friends, and if I want to know how rich I am, all I have to do is look at my family and friends, because I do feel very rich because of them. Besides, I still have my 2 screwdrivers.
Thank you. Congratulations. By the way, to fill in a couple of pieces, Dottie Granick has called me from retirement. She wants the pencil back and the 2 screwdrivers. We have an inventory shortfall. You're hearing about some of the legends of our company, and I told you we had 600 plus people that have celebrated 25 or more years. You want another outstanding number? More than 70 people have celebrated 50 or more years with our company. And this year, our chairman of the board has become the senior of the seniors. Mr. Jack Amsterdam has the new record for, there you go, for seniority. I'm not allowed to tell. 63. What's incredible, Jack said to me the other day that he's got suits older than I am. Let me ask, if I could, please, Hockey Tanzi, Bill Doobie, and Jack Liebman, you're up there already, right? Our next presentation is to another member of the class of 71, Mr. Hank Polkowski. Well, let me just tell you a few things about Hank, because I had the good fortune very early on in my career to work with Hank. His first job was with Information Services. And his diligence, his effort, his commitment, his dedication is probably typified by his first week of work, when we asked him to bring 200 orders from Brooklyn to Maspeth. He put them on the top of the car and somehow became distracted by someone going by. And somehow those orders never, ever arrived at Maspeth. Hank, is that true? And I didn't tell you what distracted him. I don't think so. Okay? We're still getting calls for service on those. Let me also tell you another one about Hank. Now, Hank, I don't want you to blush about this. Hank is working out in Los Angeles. And being the diligent guy that he did, he shows back up in the middle of the night to check on what was happening with our data processing system, with the programmer. However, in his ultimate brilliance, he entered the wrong code, so the police came and detained him for 6 hours at the warehouse in one of the worst neighborhoods of LA. Now, it was not that same trip, but it was a similar trip, all right? Hank was out in LA, and he was not married at this time, so I have to preface this. Okay? He was not dating, he was not married. Hank went to spend, as opposed to coming home, a weekend in Las Vegas. A weekend in Las Vegas. Now, Hank being the dutiful guy that he was, requested permission and he granted it. And the only strange thing that I saw on the entire expense account was the alternate driver, who happened to have been the receptionist at the Leventon LA play. Did I embarrass you sufficiently, Hank? But I want you to know that he combined some wonderful skills, because Hank originally also organized the baseball league, and he captained the MIS team, which I was part of. He was smart enough to back me in cleanup and put me at shortstop. Anyway, let me turn it over now to Hockey Tansy. Hockey?
Again, I'll give you some background on Hank. Hank joined Leventon on February 22nd, 1971 as a system engineer, getting paid $3.75 per hour. 85 hour records are wrong. Don Penance. In that role, working for Jack Schmidt and then Ken Kessler, Hank was involved in the design and implementation of many of the embryonic systems that moved Leventon into the era of data processing. The assignments included the installation of the Raytheon systems in our distribution centers for order entry and invoicing. This not only included system development, but Hank was also responsible for traveling to our warehouses and doing on-site training. Remember, when this started, our warehouses had their own inventories in top files. So Hank was there as inventories moved from cards to in-house data online visibility. In 1981, Hank moved to distribution to begin the systems development work that led to our current distribution planning system. In distribution, Hank worked for Harry Meyer first, and then Bill Dilby, Susan DeNalfa, Chris DeVella, and then worked for Bill again. And in 1995, the distribution planning function was moved to materials management, and as of that day, Hank reported to Jack Lieberman. Among the many accomplishments, we can include the following: development of an inventory accuracy cycle count system that made our warehouses almost industry standard. A key designer of many of elements that are now in common practice in all of our locations and our standards today. Hank's really outstanding accomplishments was the ability to recognize and hire and train outside talent. Truly, he's brought in a pool of remarkably talented people, consisting of such people as Jeff Johnson, Gino DeVico, Tom Jones, Paul Don, and John Werner, as well as the talented people who currently work in the department. And also, some of them work in the forecasting department. At this point, I'm going to ask Bill Dilby, take it from here, Bill.
To put in perspective how long Hank has worked for the company, when he restarted the Fayetteville Lebanon softball team, we were still in the Brooklyn plant. On that softball team were not only Steve Socolow, and to show what his true judge of talent he was, he batted him cleanup, but Steve Hiller was even on that team. Steve played about one game for him and decided he had enough of that. But Hank and I went on to play many years together, play softball together, and we've always had a close friendship and affinity for each other. And I think a lot of that for me went back to what Hank taught me, not only when he worked for me, but all the way back to 1974 was my first learning experience with Hank. We played on the Lebanon basketball team, and Hank organized a game against an all-star team from the Bushwick section of Brooklyn. We went to their court on Bushwick Avenue to play the game. Hank was in the game 43 seconds. I'll never forget looking up at the clock before their 6'7" center elbowed him, and Hank took umbrage
and had the foresight to punch that man in the stomach. That was when he taught me my first lesson, how loud 100 switchblades sound when they open the door. He is still teaching us things, so I'm going to let Jack Lieberman tell you some of the things he teaches me.
Thank you. Besides the accomplishment mentioned by Hockey and Bill, there's a couple other things that Hank is noted for. One is his ability to fall asleep anywhere. Apparently this was a legend among the people in distribution and IS who thought the only reason he took these training assignments in the far-flung corners was just to find new places and new challenges for sleeping. I don't know if that's still in place. You'll have to tell us later, Hank. The other one is a fairly new talent, and that is for locating casinos near every one of our facilities. The rumor is that Sparks was really Hank's choice because it was Reno, but he's made it to the A-House in San Diego. And I know down in Atlantic City, which he considers a suburb of Little Neck. So, and do you know that you must stop at Foxwood on the way to Hillsborough? But beside all this, the thing that Hank is going to be remembered for is the startup of our distribution planning system. Prior to the installation of that system, distribution and operations and forecasting were three separate systems, each one our own way, and no matter what Mr. Amsterdam complained about back orders, one of us was always right, the other two was always wrong. He never knew which one. The good thing is that with Hank's hard work and working with the consultants and IS, we put together this distribution planning system that has carried us for as many years, and the accomplishments have just been phenomenal. Just this last year, our inventory reduction, without hurting service, was an absolute record for the company. And it's through the hard work of groundwork laid by Hank many years ago that this has happened. The other thing that you should know about is that all of the changes that have taken place in our distribution network over the past few years, Hank has been intimately involved with the planning to make sure it happened without affecting customer service. We're talking about opening Atlanta, Dallas, Chicago, Consumer Warehouse, Chicago, Sparks. We're talking about closing Naspeth, Seattle, Los Angeles, Dallas, the Chicago Consumer Warehouse, and now Old Fort. All of this has taken place under Hank's planning control, and it's happened without affecting customer service, which is a hell of a testimonial to a job well done. Hank's married to Ann, 10 years now. They have sons 5 and 7 who are both becoming basketball players. Hank, congratulations.
Hank, I know I've been a pain in your butt. All I can tell you is that you've done a wonderful job. You've helped me out. You've helped the company out in many instances where we were in trouble. And I congratulate you on a job well done.
Thank you. It's been a very exciting 25 years. I just want to start off by saying 1971 wasn't the first time I came in contact with the Lebanon name. As several of you know, I grew up in Greenpoint. I grew up on Jewel Street, 2.5 blocks from the Lebanon facility. And hearing the Lebanon name was very common. I mean, they were the largest employer in the area. But the way they said the name was a lot different in those days. As a matter of fact, I used to love the way people would describe what Lebanon was. You see, there was a movie house on Manhattan Avenue. It had changed names a few times, but it was, for a while it was called the Chopin Theater, named after the legendary composer. And it would be fairly, Chopin, C-H-O-P-I-N is how it's spelled. So it would be fairly common in Greenpoint to say, oh, you know Tommy's father? Yeah, he works at Levington. Yeah, Levington up by the Choppin. Yeah, that's where he works. It wasn't until 1971 that I realized there was no ING on the word. Maybe they dropped it somewhere else. I also played Little League Baseball, and representing in the league was such places like Manhattan Three-Decker, Saucony Golden, which is the team I played for, Trons Meat Market, Greenpoint Savings Bank, and Lebanon sponsored the team. We actually played them quite frequently. They had a blue and gray uniform covering them. But my most memorable experience with Lebanon came while playing softball. As Steve indicated, we played a lot of softball those days. And we used to play on Diamond Street in the back of Lebanon, Diamond and Collier, for those that remember the geography. And before there was that wall, there was even a green fence, I remember, as a boy. And I'm talking, I was probably 10 or 11 then. And we played with home plate, with Lebanon behind home plate. And we would hit it to the 2 streets, the 4 silvers would be like the bases. And it's the kind of game where anything off the wall was out. We hit the ball that way because that side had all screens, metal screens covered the windows. The area behind home plate, there was a guard booth there with a guard at the time. I mean, this was a long time ago. And there were windows that weren't, enclosed by that metal gate. We played several years and we never broke one. The only way we could probably break one would be a wild throw to home plate or a foul ball. Well, I hit the foul ball. I hit the foul ball, the window broke, my friend scattered, all of a sudden I knew I was in the guard booth giving the guard my name and address and phone number, and he was very fair about it. He just said he'd contact my parents and they would have to pay for the window. And, well, I wasn't supposed to be breaking windows, I was scared, I didn't know what was going to happen. In that age, you got your name on some guard sheet, you're scared. So every day I went home and I would check the mail, this was the summertime, I would check the mail, the phone would ring, I would run and answer it. And after a few weeks, nothing happened. Instantaneously, I became one of Lebanon's smallest PR men. I would walk around saying, Leamington, they're okay. That window I broke, they let me slide. So I was a Lebanon fan as a child. That's all true. Susan will tell you that's true because I told her I've been working 25 years to tell the story. So in 1971, I answered a blind ad in the paper. And Ron McGowan called me, and he said, you answered this ad for industrial engineer, and the name of the company is Lebanon. He said, have you ever heard or knew what the name was? Sure, Lebanon, they're white shopping, I know. So I had no problem, finding a company and was hired. It's been a very eventful 25 years. There's been a lot of challenges, like Steve and Jack, etc., hockey you mentioned about me going through a house. And I remember, Steve sent me out, I guess, with Jack when I was 23 years old. I went to LA, not to do an audit, but to do a physical inventory of the whole place. And I went out with cards, which was what was in fashion those days. And I went to a company called, I don't know if Steve remembers it, Steve, High Sierra Data was the name of the company, I still remember. And I was supposed to have them run logs, which were really sheets of paper then, of how to take the inventory. And mind you, I'm 23 years old, I'm not playing with 2 boxes of cards, going out to do this physical by myself. It was kind of like a lot of, felt good about it. And then I get out there and have this guy from High Sierra, who was a leftover hippie from the 60s. He had long hair, beard, and was really, very unusual to deal with. But it worked out fine, the inventory came out fine, we worked the weekend, etc., and that was one of my first real big challenges. And since then, there have been many more. And I'm looking forward to more. That's all I can say. Thank you to the Lebanon family, thank you to the executive committee, etc., Hockey, Jack, Bill, etc., for giving me the opportunity.
Thank you, Hank. But so you know that Leviton, while we're fair and nice, we have a long memory. Ralph DiBiase has asked me to tell you that inside your watch box, underneath the lip, you will find an invoice for 37 cents covering the expense. We did not accrue interest, much to his chagrin. At this moment in time, if I can ask, please, Mr. Ralph DiBiase and Mr. Mark Berdarian to come up, please.
I'd like to give you a little employment background on Steve. Steve started at the Leviton Company 25 years ago, which is a good thing. This is a 25-year award. Steve's first job was in the finance department as a figure clerk. I still don't know what that means. If someone could tell me. Steve briefly left the company in '71 to seek self-employment. However, Steve couldn't stay away. He sold his business and came back to the Leviton company. A few months, I guess he came back as the accounts receivable. In '76, Steve assumed additional responsibilities in the accounting department.